Kremlin-controlled media is celebrating after President Trump says he wants to see Russia rejoin the group of strongest industrial nations, the G7. A translated version of President Trump's remarks getting massive applause on state TV.
Well, that's not the way it really should work.
State TV already showing graphics of a G8 logo now with a Russian flag, claiming President Trump made the move because he feels he owes Russia after the U.S. recently tested a land-based Tomahawk cruise missile.
Trump just tested the new Tomahawks that will soon probably be deployed next to our borders to scare us. So it looks like the American president feels guilty or ashamed. Saddened, Trump decided to unburden himself and agreed with Macron to invite us to G7. They missed us.
Russia was kicked out of the group in 2014 after it invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea. The decision was made during the Obama administration, but was approved by a majority of the member nations. Still, President Trump tonight choosing to praise Putin over his predecessor.
Because Putin outsmarted him, President Obama thought it wasn't a good thing to have Russia in, so he wanted Russia out.
Despite Trump's words, Russia's leader is showing Trump the cold shoulder, today saying Russia is developing new advanced weaponry and even blaming the U.S. in part for a recent explosion during a botched Russian weapons test that led to a radiation spike.
The tragedy in the White Sea that took lives of our specialists happened during works on advanced weaponry. We are not hiding that. The people who suffered were doing critical work to ensure the security of our state, because our partners, including the Americans, are testing new systems. So we also need to pay extra attention to this.
Roughly an estimated 15,000 ISIS fighters in Iraq and Syria now. Secretary Pompeo saying there that in some ways the terror group is stronger than it was 3 or 4 years ago. How big of a concern should this news be for Americans?
It should be a very serious concern for the President of the United States and for our country, because his first responsibility is to protect our country. And we learned from 9/11 the fact that these terrorists have one fundamental aim, which is to attack the United States and attack countries in the West. If we simply withdraw our forces and pretend that ISIS and the remnants of al-Qaeda are no longer a threat, make no mistake about it, it is an open invitation to terrorists to establish the kind of base from which they can conduct attacks against the United States. We can't let that happen again.
Well, Secretary, that's a terrifying proposition because that's under consideration. That's a real conversation that's happening right now is will troops be leaving Syria? How long will troops be in Afghanistan, where ISIS is now very clearly becoming a threat there as well?
I think the president has to be very careful here about just going ahead and promising that somehow we're going to pull back all of our troops from that region without having any assurances that ultimately this problem will be dealt with. He says, let others deal with the problem that we've got, we're 7,000 miles away. But that has always been a false promise by isolationists. They used that argument in the 1930s that said that because of our oceans, we didn't have to worry about Nazi Germany. And today we're saying that somehow we can withdraw and be able to be protected. We are not protected in a global world with a global threat from ISIS and from terrorism. Yeah. We have to worry that ultimately if they mobilize, their next target will be an attack on the United States.
So recently there have been concerns that executions by lethal injection, which are supposed to be quick and painless, aren't either. Typically, executions are done with 3 drugs given in stages. So the first drug is an anesthetic, and it's supposed to anesthetize the inmate. The second drug is called a paralytic, and it's supposed to keep the inmate from flailing around. And then the third drug is supposed to stop the heart. Executioners used to use a drug called sodium thiopental as that first drug, as the anesthetic, but then the only company that made it in the United States stopped making it. So they went to Europe and said, can we get it from you? But European drug companies said, no, we are not going to sell it to you if it's going to be used for the purpose of executing inmates. So since they haven't been able to use the sodium thiopental for the executions, they've gone to another anesthetic. This one is called midazolam. And in 3 executions, there might have been some problems with it. Instead of going quickly and painlessly, witnesses who watched the execution said that inmates were gasping or snorting or making choking sounds, and at least in one execution that the inmate was actually speaking. So among states that do the death penalty, there's been some consideration, does this 3-step method really work? So now using this new drug combination has raised some questions about whether it constitutes cruel and unusual punishment and whether it might be unconstitutional.